After having served several months overseas, a soldier begins his long journey home to return to his loving wife and their toddler son. The boy had grown so much since his father's tour of duty, and was now walking and talking and very typically spry for a boy of his age. The father couldn't wait to finally see his son after all this time, and stopped briefly to purchase a toy ball as a gift for him, and spent the entire ride home thinking of how wonderful it would be to finally have a chance to play with him in the spacious yard of their rural ranch home. Joy that cannot be expressed in mere words filled the former soldier as he played with his son on those warm summer days hours at a time until the sun began to melt behind the horizon. Their favorite game was passing the toy ball back and forth, and this simple game was such a strong, loving bond between father and son. One evening, as the twilight air began to cool, a wind stirred up that was as strong as it was curiously bitter with chill. Distracted for a moment by a conversation with his wife, the father didn't notice the increasingly strong wind and how it took hold of the ball and rolled it down the long hill that led into the woods behind the ranch. Giggling with anticipation, his son chased after the ball, not hesitating for once as it rolled intently into the ridge of trees that marked the beginning of untamed woodland. By the time the father noticed that his son had wandered off, the boy was no longer visible behind the wall of trees. After months of searching, no body was ever recovered. The only thing found was the toy ball, which the father kept to remind him of the last lucid moments he shared with his beloved son. Within a year of grieving, the ex-soldier and his wife finally moved into an apartment closer to the city, leaving the ranch and the terrible memories of loss in the past. One uncomfortably hot evening, the man sat at his desk, slowly and carefully completing several job applications while his wife slaved her second shift job at the local volunteer community shelter. The pages rustled every so often with the warm, damp breeze from the open window, which provided little relief to the awful heat. The man wiped his brow and continued with the humiliating tediousness. He is suddenly distracted by a soft thud. Looking around the dark room, he finally realizes something out of place. The toy ball, which had been sitting complacently atop a bookshelf for years, had been nudged out of place by the wind. The man stared at the ball, emotionally numb at first and then washed with a deep and sobering grief. He sat and stared, mesmerized for several moments, before slowly lumbering out of his chair to retrieve it. God forbid his wife see this sad sentiment. But as he approached the ball, the wind at that very moment picked up, and pushed the ball away from him towards the door. Not thinking anything of it, the former infantryman scooped up the toy and wedged it firmly back into its place on top of the bookshelf, and slumped his way to bed, giving up on finishing the stack of applications that would be waiting for him the next morning. Several days passed, and the unrelenting humid weather persisted, and the window stayed parted to let what little relief could be had from an occasional breeze. Around the same hour as before, while reviewing several letters of decline, the man heard a familiar soft thud from behind him. Again, he turns to find the toy ball sitting complacently in the middle of the room. And once again, he sat and stared at it somewhat obliviously. But then, just as the impulse fired in his thoughts to get up and retrieve the ball, the wind stirs and pushes it away from him toward the door. This moment played out all too familiar for him, and he suddenly froze in curiosity. He took a step toward the ball, and on cue, the wind picks up and creeps the ball an equal distance away toward the door. Another step, and again, the wind pushes the toy ball. This continues step by step until the ball is in the upstairs hallway with the man just a few paces behind it. But then it occurs to him, there is no way that the wind could carry into the hallway. Upon that realization, the ball slowly rolled toward him and stopped at his feet. He was equally as curious as he was unnerved. Almost reflexively, he nudges the ball with his foot, and it tumbles down the hallway until it crawls to a stop. Again, he pauses for a moment, unable to process what is happening. And again, just as he has a notion to discount these surreal events as his overactive anxiety, the ball completely on its own recognizance begins to roll back toward him, this time with enough momentum to audibly bump against his toes. But instead of fear, something deep in his heart accepts this moment as an opportunity, and he nudges the ball again, somehow knowing that it would return to him on cue. And this intimately paranormal game continued for at least another few minutes until the man picked up the ball, satisfied that the ball was moving on its own intent. Warm tears streamed uncontrollably from his eyes as he returned to his room and replaced the ball in its place on top of the bookshelf. He never told his wife of the incident, and fell asleep next to her, overwhelmed by what had just occurred to the point of exhaustion. Alone the next evening, as he sorted through the inevitably cowardly dismissals of his employment applications, he came upon a small, curiously distressed envelope with only his name printed by hand on the back. Tilting his head, he opened the letter to find a note written in blood on a torn piece of cloth from a child's shirt. The note read, "Thanks for showing me how you play the ball game with your son. It might make what he's going through easier on him."
I woke up early that morning. I put my cold feet on my hard apartment floor, I do my morning rituals, and get ready for work. When I head outside I notice it's a very overcast day, almost as if it's going to rain. I am on my way to work and I hit traffic. Shit, I'm gonna be late again. I think to myself. I get to the bank I work at, I'm a teller in a smallish city. The guard, must have been a new guy, asks for my ID to get in the back area where people aren't allowed, unless they're staff. I give him my badge, he looks it over. "Sorry sir, this appears to be a fake, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "What?" "I've worked here for 2 years, let me speak to the company's manager, she'll clear this up." "Fine, sir, ask one of the other tellers for the company number and the bank number." I walk up to the nearest desk, it's my coworker Janet. "Hey Jan, how've you been?" "Sir, do I know you?" Yeah. I've been your coworker since you started here a year and a half ago." "Funny, I've never seen you before in my life." She blankly stares as she said it, it creeped me out. Yeah, can I get the number for this place and the number to the company?" "Yes, here you go." I take the piece of paper and call the company, I ask for the bank's manager, and I get her on the phone, we speak for an hour and a half, to my amazement, she doesn't know who the hell I am. I eventually just give up and go home, when I get there I sit down, and flip through my phone. I text my girlfriend, surely she remembers me. "Hey, what's up? Who is this?" "This is Chris, your boyfriend?" "I don't know anyone named Chris." "Who the hell is this?" "Come on, stop kidding around, today has been awful. Please stop texting me or I'll call the police." Instantly I think to myself, what the actual fuck is going on here? I felt lost, it's not like everyone could just forget me in a matter of 7 hours. So I sit there, while it rains, thinking that this is some stupid fucking prank my friends are pulling on me, while I think of all the glorious ways to get them back. I watch TV for a few hours before deciding to take a nap. Well, that nap was about 16 hours long. I woke up, and I still feel exhausted. I got dressed same as always, and head out the door. It's still pouring out, so I run to my car, I get in and start heading to Jake's house, my best friend since I was 8. I arrive 30 minutes or so later, and knock on his door. He answers. "Yeah? Hey Jake. Ready to head out to the bars? It's been a row." "Just hold on, who the fuck are you, and how do you know my name?" He interrupts with, "Come on man, everyone's been giving me this shit since yesterday, cut it out." "Look, man, I don't know who you are, I'm only gonna ask that ya leave one time." Jake being a rather large guy, I just sort of nod and walk off, wondering what the hell is going on. I decide to hit the bar anyways, alone. I get to my favorite watering hole, and stay until I'm drunk enough. After a few hours of heavy drinking, it's getting dark, so I stumble onto the street. It's no longer raining, and the streets aren't wet. I barely noticed because of my state of shit-facedness. I stumble to my car, because drunk driving is great, stay in school kids. Anyways, stabbing my car with my key trying to unlock it, when I'm tapped on the shoulder, thinking it's a cop, I turn around trying to look sober, and look him in the eye. What I see isn't a cop, rather a man in a gray coat, shadows casting over his face. I can't see his eyes, just his chin and mouth. It dawns on me that I don't feel drunk anymore, and everything seems still. The man opens his mouth and says, "So, Christopher, It would seem you've become less than a memory. What? Who are you exactly? Who am I? That is a question you should ask yourself. Why would I ask who I am? I know who I am. He lets out a small, deep, gravely giggle. Then, tell me, who exactly are you? I'm Christopher Johnson. I asked who you are, not your given name. Now tell me, who are you that everyone's forgotten? How do you know about that? I whimpered. Oh, I know a great deal of things. It is what you've always feared. No. I don't. Why would I be scared if some people don't remember me? He simply laughs, and before I know it, he's gone. I feel lightheaded, and, well, it's hard to explain. I get home, able to drive just fine, not too far away anyway. I get into my bed and black out. I wake up, it's 8:30 a.m., I hear a knock on my door. I get out of my bed and walk to the living room. I look through the door's peephole, no one. I decide maybe I should check for a note. I open the door, no note, but I look down and see a small white box. I look around the hallway and pick it up, and place it on the counter. I look at the piece of paper on the side, it reads to, nobody from. I think about if I should open this, because I'm starting to get the shit scared out of me. This is horror movie shit here. I decide after staring at the cardboard box I'm being a wimp about it. I open it up, it's a picture frame. I turn it over and it's a photo of my family, my mother, father, 2 sisters, and aunt. But I remember this photo, I have it on my desk, and I'm supposed to be in the photo. I rush to my desk and look at it, the photo, it's the same, I'm not in it. I drop the frame on the floor and the glass breaks. I pull out my wallet, and look at my driver's license, it's not there. I got to my cell phone, can't find it. I try calling it from my home phone, and get this number is not currently in service. Please call back at another time. Frantically, I call my father. He picks up on the first ring. Dad. Something is happening, I don't know what it is, I don't know what to do, no one remembers me, I'm so scared. Dad. Christopher. Do you realize your situation? Do you know why you've always been alone, and ignored, now? What, that voice? You again? Oh, silly Christopher, we've never even met, before. What did you mean my situation? Where's my father? To tell you the truth, you don't have a father. You cannot breed nothingness, and that is exactly what you've become. What? How? It's simple, you always kept yourself in isolation, and we always watched you, and decided that you deserve a gift from us. Who are you? What gift? Ironic, how you do not know who you are, yet ask us who we are. We are the ones who watch you in the shadows, the background noise you hear in complete silence. Every shadow you've ever seen slide in the darkness, was us. We warned you, we scared you, but you've only ever stayed in isolation, you were selfish, you spent your time alone, and now, you'll spend your eternity, the same. Look out your window, what do you see? In shock I drop the phone, and creep towards the window. I look outside, and all I see is dark. I open my door, my complex is vacant, I get outside, the sidewalk ends, everything is just grass and darkness. I tried to walk through it, I have for hours, but every time I turn around, I seem only 3 feet away from my home. My isolation. I'm so alone.
The worst thing about my commute was the hour-long subway ride. If you've ever been in New York, you know what I'm talking about. The putrid stench of sweat and trash filled the air, mixed with the scent of half-eaten pizza and fresh, or what people willingly believe to be fresh, fish from a Chinese market. Trash strewn about the ground like some disgruntled janitor had enough with the system. Good luck finding a seat that wasn't caked with some unknown sticky substance, or one surrounded by both a sleeping teenager and a grotesquely obese man. Of all things, I absolutely hated the vermin that I had the unfortunate chance to ride with. Except for Charles. I met Charles one afternoon 2 weeks ago. One of those young thugs you see all the time, with pants low enough to constitute as a low-riding bag, with a clear Napoleon complex, decided to shake things up and try and rob me. I'm not a small guy by any means, but I was in utter shock. Before I knew it, he pulled a knife. Right as the thug went to stab me, a man jumped out of nowhere and attacked the kid. Now, when I say out of nowhere, I mean nowhere. I saw the whole train, and God knows I didn't see him coming. Nonetheless, he tackled the kid straight to the ground, like something straight out the NFL. And this guy wasn't young, at least mid-50s, with a decent head of gray hair. This guy was strong too, holding him down with one arm, waving for help with the other, as his trench coat seemed to flap in the stagnant air. All the while, he was just staring at me with his dark eyes. I wasn't creeped out in the least. Maybe it was the shock of the whole ordeal, but his eyes comforted me somehow. When the cops arrived, the thug broke loose, and they scrambled to catch him, as passengers scrambled away. I looked up again, and the man was gone. I got off the train and left the station, before the cops returned for the victim. I just needed to go home. As I left the station and walked toward the bus stop, I felt eyes peering into me. I'm Charles. Why did you disappear like that? You saved my life, man. You looked like you needed the protection. I noticed his eyes again, those big, dark eyes that seemed to peer into my soul. Besides, you're important. He walked away briskly. I shouted after him, but he just kept moving, and then just disappeared as a tractor trailer drove by. His last words shook me up. I'm important? Who was this guy? Some stalker? Still, in a situation where anyone would have wanted to file a restraining order, I was oddly at ease. Something about him seemed comforting to me. It was like he was a guardian angel. Weeks went by, uneventful. Except for those dreams. Oh, those fleeting moments. They say that sleep is a natural method to recharge the body? God only knows those dreams did the exact opposite. Same dream every night. I walked along a barren wasteland, surrounded by the stench of numerous rotting carcasses. Human, or animal. I was terrified. Yet, it didn't matter. Because Charles was there with me. I felt protected with every step. I'm important. That idea resonated with me. I didn't know what to make of this. Exactly 1 week ago, it happened. I was sitting on the subway, coming off a night of heavy drinking. The kind that a therapist would immediately call the rehab center for. But for some reason I was surprisingly clear of mind for my level of drunkenness. It was like every shot I took was water. Every beer I drank, soda. My friends took a different train, thus I was alone. That's when he walked on. Charles. The man who saved my life. The man who graced my dreams with his presence every goddamn night. It bothered me. I needed to know the truth. As if he could read my mind, he began to speak to me. You are made for great things. You are my successor. With that, he got up and left the car at the next stop. I was just as confused as ever. He walked with a slight limp, his left shoulder dipped slightly away from me, under his thick overcoat. I was confused and scared. I don't mean scared in the typical sense, I was in utter awe of this man. What was he doing? What did he mean? These questions were left unanswered, but I was somewhat comforted. Much like the way a scared child clings to his mother during a thunderstorm, I clung to the idea of Charles. He was my protectorate, my savior. I would do anything for him. I suppose that's why I got off at the next stop. Canal Street, last stop in Manhattan. Living in Brooklyn, and a decent 40-minute train ride away, this departure would normally surprise me. But not then. And sure as hell not now. It felt right. I walked without volition. I walked without meaning. Past the stands left by the illegal vendors. Past the Chinese restaurants, where both man and beast alike stood, waiting for the smallest morsel of scraps. In the dark twilight of early morning, I wandered into an alleyway. Garbage lined the passage, but I kicked it aside, without even a hint of notice. It was then that I saw Charles again. It must have been the alcohol, but I felt his presence with me. It was like he guided my hand. He took my arm and lunged for the ground. He gripped the stone. He ignored me, as I screamed for an end. He ignored me as I smashed the bum's skull, mixing cement with bone, blood with gravel. He turned his head as I collapsed, bloody rock in hand, puking at the sight of the dead man. I resisted, but could not best his influence. A heroin junkie watched the entire thing. Shaking on a fire escape, she screamed in utter terror. Suddenly Charles appeared. This time I could see him clearly as he shoved me toward the addict. He took my hand and smashed the rock against her head, and made me feel the warm drops of her blood. I was sickened. I was disgusted. But Charles simply looked into my eyes, and without words, told me that everything would be okay. I threw up again, only to notice that I was once again alone in the alley, 2 dead bodies to call my own. I was scared. I did not know I was capable of this violence. I did not understand why Charles forced me to kill those innocent people. I did not know how he could so easily guide my body, to cause such destruction. Strangely, what I could understand was that, well, I was okay with it. These murders were little more than a mosquito's bite, little more than a nuisance. This realization scared me the most. Was I losing my mind? Was I dreaming this all? How could I possibly do all of this? Last night, Charles appeared in my dream. He told me of my fate. With each word, horrors flashed before my eyes. Death and destruction. Rapes and murders. I was still scared, but I finally understood. And here I am now. It was finally all clear. I was born for greater things. Some men only strive for survival. Thanks to Charles, even magnificence is too low a goal for me. As a grip the detonator, I feel powerful. Hundreds, no, thousands will die. Charles will be right in the center of the detonation. I fought, but he told me that this was how it was meant to be done. He looks frail and weak now. His strength has now become mine. He screams violently, clutching his wretched face, shouting towards the sky for help. For God. There is no God. Only I am God. I have taken control. He is no longer needed. People gathers as he sobs violently, but no one seems to truly care. These are the vermin that I have come to hate. I am as the angel of death. I choose and people will die. God cannot even best me. And with the brilliant sound of explosions and screams, I will claim my throne. Goodbye, Charles. You will be missed.
I'm a commuter. I start my day earlier than my fellow students and come home later than them. On Tuesdays lectures last till sunset, at least during winter season. Being a commuter you naturally gather a bunch of experiences with public transport, from major delays to cancellations and even unfriendly conductors. You will meet many things that may upset you after a hard day of work or uni. Nonetheless, this is not supposed to be a letter of complaint but rather a tale of an odd encounter. To this day I can't explain what happened. I'm thinking about it on a daily basis, trying to find something to finally soothe my mind. It's strange when you suddenly fall out of your routine and experience something that shouldn't exist. It happened on the very weekday that ends at 8 p.m. I sat in university and looked outside the large windows since the howling of a winter storm wouldn't stop bringing layers of glittering snow on the pavement. I began to worry. There was only one train I could catch to carry me home. Said vehicle departs at 8:15 p.m., my usual time walking to the station takes about 10 minutes. But now that chaos and cold reigned the streets, I knew that I had to hurry. Without saying goodbye to my fellow students I rushed out of the auditorium the moment my prof closed his mouth. Every minute was important. On my way over the campus I nearly rammed a student, and when I set foot outside I was greeted by winter itself, throwing snow, ice and sleet in my face. Biting cold devoured my body heat as I cleaved a path through the fresh powder snow. Sprinting like a mad woman I felt my shoes giving in and my socks slowly getting wet. Irregular footprints showed how efficiently the weather slowed me down. I felt my breath becoming colder. Colder than it used to be on normal winter days. By then I had an uneasy sense of being late. And I was right, a short look at my watch revealed that I had no time left. So I ran faster, slipped on ice that was as smooth as glass and got up again. Even though I jumped up the stairs to the platform, I was too late. The conductor's whistle shrilled through the night, the doors shut with a bang and the engines started moving the train. I let out a loud shit. And sat down on a bench nearby. Catching my breath again, I looked around. I was completely alone. There was no soul to see. Not a single living being. Only the stinging wind and me. My tired eyes caught sight of the scoreboard. The next train was scheduled in 50 minutes, and it wouldn't even drive to my town. A sigh escaped my coolish lips as I reached for my mobile phone. I pondered who to call to give me a lift, my parents, friends, or maybe my sister. I didn't actually decide since a headlamp caught my attention. It was coming from something that moved towards me on the same tracks I just missed my last ticket home. It was a bright light from afar, making the snowflakes shimmer in the darkness. Slowly, as if it was in no hurry, it came nearer, demasking its mysterious origin. I made out a train cab and glimpsed a shadowy figure, probably operating the vehicle. Then the whole train arrived at the station and stopped in front of me. I checked the scoreboard again, thinking there might have been a sudden change. 45 minutes until the next train. Once again I looked around to see if there were any other passengers waiting. Still, it couldn't be helped, I was alone. With their usual sound, the doors opened. I waited for people to exit the train, but nobody got out. In fact, I couldn't even see one person inside. The train's lights were on, but there was no trace of potential passengers. Confused, I decided to head to the driver's cab. I was hesitant to knock the outside doors at first, but to my surprise no one answered. So I looked through the windows and learned that it was just as empty as the rest of the train. The driver must have left into one of the passenger cars, I mumbled to myself, trying to calm me down a little bit. Unfortunately, my nervousness only increased when I couldn't find him anywhere. To be honest, I didn't enter the train. It obviously creeped me out a lot. Therefore, there was no way he could have left the train without me noticing it. My body started shaking. I didn't know whether it was caused by the bitter, cold night or the fact that an abandoned, fully lit train opened its doors for me at a lonely station. My conclusion was that I should get home as soon as possible. For some reason I couldn't get my eyes off the strange train. I went back to the bench and got out my phone. The moment I heard the first dial tone, I nearly dropped my backpack. The doors closed again. The train moved. And on top of it, the lights went out. Even the headlamp disappeared along with the train into the night's body. Dad's voice snapped me out of my shock status. After a short explanation of what has been happening, he was worried and got to the station as quickly as possible to pick his daughter up. I was certainly relieved when his car turned up and stopped in front of my pale, shivering body. That night I slept at my parents' place. Well, I tried to fall asleep, which finally happened after a 3 hours long struggle against fear. As soon as sleep numbed my scattered mind, a picture of the empty train turned my dreams into nightmares. Although there was nothing particularly horrifying about it, it made me feel helpless and lost. The train emitted an atmosphere that seemed to attract my consciousness. The next day I approached a middle-aged railway official right before lectures started. He assured me that no train has been on the tracks near my station during 8:15 and 9:05 p.m. Naturally, this made me even more worried. He laughed it off and called me a prankster who's trying to scare him. His person seemed nervous about my question though, so I asked him if there was something wrong. The man's face suddenly changed to a concerned expression. He looked me over, leaned forward, and whispered, "So you're serious about this?" I nodded since I had a lump in my throat. He shook his head like he was in disbelief, but then continued. "See, no one here wants to work at night times." He looked at the other counters next to him with his co-workers talking to customers. They say this station was the last place a man named Wallace L. Jimbert has been seen. He lived in the 19th century, don't remember when exactly. Was a kind-hearted railroad engineer loved by passengers. Rumors tell his whistle also had a unique sound. He stopped and tried to fake a smile. I couldn't believe this was the sole reason why nobody wanted to work until or during graveyard shift. That's all? Nah, but let me get this straight, I've got work to do and can't waste my time on crazy urban legends. My boss wouldn't appreciate that. I help you with tickets, schedules, or other train-related business though. I said goodbye, thanked him with a sick feeling in my stomach and went to university. Studying and my fellow students distracted me from my last night experience. I told no one. They shouldn't think that I believe in a legend that's been passed around for 200 years. I forgot about it throughout the day. But as soon as I was alone again, an eerie state of solitude cornered me. Nothing unordinary happened the remaining week except bad dreams about the same picture over and over. Me standing in front of what looked like an invitation to a lonely ride into darkness. I caught every train and the nightmares became less towards the weekend when I wouldn't use public transport. My dad called it off as a creation of my imagination due to no sleep and a hard day of studying combined with harsh weather. I wanted to believe him. Monday came and went as usual. Oddly enough, I slept like a baby, cuddled into my warm and cozy bed that night. Tuesday morning I was refreshed and gave off a healthy vibe. I had a great day at university and finally got a hang of a complicated series of lectures. Hoping I had a lucky day, my eyes glared at the windows during the last lecture. Nature crushed my hopes in form of an angry snowstorm which was probably even more rude than a week ago. This time I'll do it, murmured through my head. Like a raving loony I jumped into the snow and stomped my way through the elements barricade. I ran, I stumbled, I panted but without success. With hurting throat and sides I arrived the moment the train departed. Alarmed I looked about. Cold sweat ran down my forehead when I realized I was totally alone again. Not even the cats I heard fighting seconds ago remained at the station. The scoreboard said the same as last week, 50 minutes until the next train arrival. My stomach began to feel funny. To be more precise, my whole body reacted to this situation. It sent cold shivers up and down my spine, my heart began to race and thoughts telling me to call Dad or to leave shouted in my head. I felt dizzy and got on my knees with my bare hands touching the salt snow slush mix on the platform. Then it happened. Like a huge yellow eye, the train's headlamp spotted my cowering self and crawled towards me. I felt like defeated prey ready to be eaten as the light grew brighter and the train opened its big mouth-like doors once again before me. I wished that I was dreaming. I prayed to wake up and bit my tongue in order to escape back into my bed, but nothing happened. The uncanny vehicle was still in front of me. Shaking, I built myself up again. The freezing wind played with my hair as I stood in the middle of loneliness facing the manifestation of my nightmares. The urge to vomit climbed its way up my gullet, the dizziness increased as I nearly collapsed. I strived after collapsing just to get out of this situation. Wallace Jimbert, I recalled the legend's protagonist. Suddenly Pric Kling pierced the darkened thoughts of fear and misery. My brain seemed to brighten up. Saying his name worked like a command. I'm not sure how long I fought with myself not to enter the train, but I couldn't resist an unknown will to finally take a step forward. So I did. I obeyed and got inside. The warmness of the heated passenger car welcomed me as the doors closed behind. The tension inside my body cooled down. Breath after breath I got more relaxed. I turned around and looked outside. My pupils widened as a man's silhouette put a whistle in his mouth. A high-pitched yet soft sound penetrated my ears. A unique sound, my lips stated on their own. Smoothly the train set itself in motion. I expected the lights to turn off, but fortunately it didn't happen, so I decided to take a seat. On my way into the cabin my nose took note of many smells. I smelled bourgeois perfume, leather, wood, and sweat. For a moment I blamed it on my bizarre situation and therefore oversensitive senses, but as I looked outside the window at my seat my hair stood on end. It's hard to describe. I try to forget about it. I try to erase it from my memory. The light caused a reflection in the window. A reflection that showed people sitting on the empty seats. People dressed in old-fashioned clothes, men wearing top hats and tailcoats, women wearing fancy dresses. I leaped to my feet. My heart sank into my boots as I looked at the real seats. The passenger car was empty. Nobody has been here except me. I turned to the window again. The reflections disappeared. So did the smells. At this point I questioned my state of mind. I threw myself into the seat's cushion and waited until my legs stopped trembling. Desperately I started laughing and determined what to do next. Break the glass to get out of this freak show or pay a visit to the driver. I favored the latter and walked through the cabins until I reached the end of the train, the driver's cab. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Of course. I knew it. Why should it be different? What was I expecting? The cab was unmanned. No person operated the cockpit. Speechless I placed my exhausted body on the free seat and buried my face in my hands. Tears ran down my wrists and dropped on my shoes. After some minutes of sobbing I noticed something carved next to buttons on the console. It read W.L.G. Reading his initials gave me hope. I smiled and suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder. Obviously no one has been found, but I stood up and let an apparent ghost sit down. I watched as the joystick moved by its own and the train getting faster. I saw buttons being pressed. And heard a silent farewell just as I closed my eyes for a second to wipe away the tears with my sweater. Why are you crying, miss? Is something wrong? Can I help you? I stood on a crowded platform. An old lady gave me a concerned look. I'm okay, thanks. I tried to make out where I was. I realized I was at my home station. Excited I turned around to see if I could take a last look at Jimbert's train. Shocked I noticed that it was a different type of vehicle. It was filled with many people. Modern clothed people. I know this sounds odd, but did I just get out of that train? Of course you did. You stepped out crying. Are you sure you're alright? Yes. I am. I felt up my shoulder as I sat down a bench to recall everything that has been happening. I brooded over every detail and watched the station. The train I supposedly arrived with meanwhile has left the platform and made place for something which left me even more puzzled. The 8:15 train I missed opened its doors for the passengers.